In a world where hustle culture collides with wellness warnings and workplace demands keep evolving, how do we stay sharp without burning out? How do we navigate the endless stream of wellness trends while actually getting results? This is the Work and Wellness Podcast, and I'm your host, Ange Davis. Drawing from my own journey of wins, stumbles, and honest revelations, I'll be bringing you raw, unfiltered conversations with experts and inspiring guests who've been there, lived it, and found a better way. Together, we'll cut through the noise and workshop what it really means to be well in today's workplace. No more choosing between success and sanity. No more sacrificing health for achievement. Whether you're struggling with burnout, searching for purpose, or simply ready to work smarter, not harder, you're in the right place. This is real talk about real solutions for real people. Let's get into it. Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. Today's episode is all about the power of strong relationships and why the people around us might be the most important wellbeing investment that we make. This topic feels extra close to my heart at the moment. I have just returned from a weekend in Sydney, visiting some of my oldest and dearest friends. And as I was flying home, I was reminded that really no supplement, no routine, no amount of productivity hacks really can compete with good humans who fill up your cup. And I'm going to share a little bit about that weekend, but I also want to unpack the research, including the Harvard study of adult development. Now, I know it sounds a little boring to talk about a Harvard study, but it really is quite fascinating because it's the longest running study on well-being in the world. And as a little bit of a spoiler alert, it shows that relationships are actually the strongest predictor of health, happiness, and longevity. So I want to talk a little bit about that study. It's been running for more than 85 years, and Harvard researchers have been following two groups of people, tracking everything from health to career habits, stress, lifestyle. And the consistent theme throughout the study is that the quality of your relationships is the single biggest predictor of your mental and physical health. Not your income, not your job title, not how many green juices or what supplements you take, not how often you exercise or meditate. People who feel connected, deeply connected to their friends and family in their relationships have better emotional regulation, lower levels of anxiety and depression, stronger resilience, better cognitive health, longer life expectancy, and probably my favorite is they have a greater sense of meaning and joy, because really that's the whole purpose of life. So in other words, we're wired for connection, and community really isn't optional, it's protective. And yet, in a world of high performance, stress, distraction, and busyness, because Lord knows we are all busy, relationships are actually the first thing that we really sacrifice. And I'm sure that resonates with many of you. When we're busy, we've got a lot on, we're busy with work, we're busy with our family. The first thing that usually goes are the catch ups with our friends or the people that we hold dear to us because we're feeling like we don't have the time or energy to do it. And I was thinking about this a lot on the weekend when I went to Sydney to see some of my oldest friends. It was after a huge week at work, and I was going into the weekend already feeling a little tired. Now, I was super excited to go, but I was just already feeling depleted, and I knew that socially it would be a really big weekend. Lots of catch-ups with people, lots of energy, and I felt like I don't know how I was going to have the energy to catch up with everyone. But what I realized is after those catch-ups with everyone, even though it meant early wake-ups and, lots of energy out, even though I was physically tired, I was internally energized. And that trip really reminded me that connection isn't just something that feels good when you're with someone and you're in flow and you know when you catch up with someone and you sort of lose time because you're just chatting away and enjoying yourself. But it's something that keeps us well. Connection keeps us really well. And it's interesting, I reflect back to the documentary on blue zones, which are the areas that have the most amount of people who live to and over 100. And there was a lot of things that they shared that they did, different diets, Mediterranean diets, low carb, etc., moving every day, all of those sorts of things. The one thing that I realized in that documentary that transcended all of the blue zones was that they maintained strong relationships and community all the way into their later years. And I think connection really is a preventative tool. It's not just a support, because when we talk about well-being, we often focus on things like sleep, routine, mindset, movement, nutrition, and all of those things are absolutely valid and they do make a really big impact on our well-being. But the science actually shows that healthy relationships are one of the strongest protective factors against stress, burnout, anxiety, and loneliness. So investing in relationships have an exponential positive impact on our mental health and well-being. Connection co-regulates our nervous system. So when we're with people, it helps to regulate our nervous system. It reduces cortisol, which is our stress hormone. It boosts oxytocin, which is our feel-good hormone. Fun fact, a 20-second hug also boosts our oxytocin, but of course, seek permission before you go around hugging people for 20 seconds. Connection widens our window of tolerance. So when we think about when challenging things happen, usually our window of tolerance narrows. So we get more snappy, more frustrated. When we're connected, it widens our window of tolerance. We're less reactive, we're more tolerant. It increases self-compassion and it helps cope with uncertainty. And that's why, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but sometimes you can walk into a catch-up feeling a little tired or flat, like I did on the weekend. I went into the weekend feeling tired and walk out feeling strangely energized or almost like a different person. And that is literally our biology shifting by being around people who really fill our cup. One of the themes that is coming up a lot in my work lately is that line between boundaries and saying no and pushing yourself to connect even when you feel tired. And I think it's a really important topic to discuss because I agree that sometimes you do not feel like you want to catch up with people and you want to put a boundary in place to say, I need some rest, I need some downtime, I don't want to catch up. But sometimes, and I said this on a podcast that I did a few weeks ago, is inconvenience is the price you pay for community. And so it's really about discerning what catch ups are going to fill you up and what ones are going to drain you. And choosing to push yourself out of your comfort zone, outside of your tiredness, to go and do the catch ups that you know will fill you up, but to withhold your boundaries on the catch ups that you know will deplete and drain you. And sometimes it just takes a little trial and error. Sometimes we don't know what catch-ups are going to drain us and what catch-ups are going to fuel us, or what people will drain us and what people will fuel us. But I do encourage you to think about, once you've had some time with someone, take a moment to pause and see how you're feeling afterwards. And if you're feeling internally energized, then that's a person you want to go out of your comfort zone for, to really invest in spending time with, even when you're tired, even after a big week, because they're the ones that are going to energize you. But if you do spend time with someone and you feel depleted, you feel like all they've done is either talk at you or take from you, those are the catch-ups where I suggest you assert your boundaries and say no. So that's something that comes up a lot and a question that I get asked a lot. And I really do think one of the best ways to do that is to notice how you feel after a catch-up and then note that next time you're wanting to catch up with someone. So, community works because it pulls you out of your own head. When you spend time with someone, it's a dialogue, a back and forth, and it gets you out of your own sort of sphere of ruminating and thinking. And it's important nuance to highlight because sometimes when we feel lonely, it makes us want to withdraw even more. And then that withdrawal increases our loneliness. So it becomes this vicious cycle. But the antidote to that is just taking small action. And it's often imperfect. But research shows that when you spend time with your community, even when you're tired or stressed or not in the mood, it improves our mood, our motivation, our energy. It gives us a fresh perspective. It gives us hope. And it reminds us of our sense of identity. Sometimes connection works because you didn't feel like going. And that just helps your brain reset. Because when you don't feel like going, you do, and then you feel better afterwards. It reminds you of why it's so important. So, like I said, I was tired before I left for my weekend away in Sydney with my friends. But after those catch ups, I felt so incredibly energized, even though I was still tired. I felt emotionally energized, like my cup was full. Now, I want to talk about what strong relationships actually look like. Because if we think back to when we're younger, it's the number of friends that we have that we think really dictates our community and our relationships. But it's not about having hundreds of friends or about being on all the time. It's about the depth of those relationships, not the breadth. People who know you, who see you, who you feel like you can really be yourself around. The quality and depth of relationships is what really helps to improve our mental health and well-being. Consistency. So small repeated touch points, no matter how big the catch up is. So small. It doesn't have to be these big catch ups. Now, this time for me in Sydney was that. It was big catch ups that I have less often, but it doesn't always have to be like that. It can be a quick coffee or a 20-minute walk or a quick check in to see how someone is. Maybe it's a voice note. So consistency is really important in building those relationships. Psychological safety. So, the ability to talk about hard stuff without judgment is really important. And it sort of comes back to being able to feel like you can be your whole self when you're around someone. Reciprocity. Now, this is really important for me because it needs to be equal give and take. Now, it will come in ebbs and flows. There will be times when you need more support, more of a listening ear, more advice, more help. And there will be times when your friend needs that. So I always say always comes out in the wash. And as long as it comes out in the wash and it feels like there's give and take throughout your relationship, that makes for a successful relationship. When it feels like one person is always giving and one person is always taking, those are the relationships that I feel are depleting and the ones you want to ask yourself if they are really worth your time and energy. And then the final thing that is really important for strong relationships is joy, shared laughter. And laughter is medicine for the nervous system. And I look back to the weekend and gosh, I had so much laughter, remembering silly things from the past or just laughing about things that really are so small. And I think if you have one or two relationships that have these five things, depth, consistency, psychological safety, reciprocity, and joy, then your well-being is going to be really well looked after. So I wanted to share a few ways that you can deepen your relationships to help really foster strong relationships to help your health and well-being. The first one is to simply send a text to someone that you've been thinking about. It literally takes 20 seconds and it has a disproportionate well-being effect for you and for the person. It might be a voice note, it might be a text. The second thing you can do is make connection part of your routine, not an afterthought. So book in a regular catch up. I've got friends that I catch up with once a month. We book the next catch up once we've had the catch up that we're at. Or you might want to have a regular walk with someone. Or maybe you have a day of the week where you reach out to your friends and just text them or send them a voice note. Allow people to support you. This is a very hard one for me. I feel like I'm very independent and I find it really hard to accept support. But particularly over the last few months, I have found accepting support really helped to deepen my relationships, improve my mental health and well-being, because when we have hyper independence, it can lead to emotional isolation and actually negatively impact our mental health and well-being. Do things together even when you don't feel like it. So I encourage you to think about not canceling that dinner with someone that you know really fills your cup up. Different if it's someone who drains you and you really want to think about asserting your boundaries. But if you know that that person really fills your cup and you always have a great time when you're with them, really try not to cancel that time spent with them, because humans thrive in collective experiences. And finally, build micro communities. So it might be in your workplace, might be in your Pilates class, it could be your neighbors, or it could be through hobbies. Because connection doesn't need to be big, it doesn't need to be years long relationships. You can have really strong connection in your small communities, in your gym, wherever you go on a regular basis. Building that connection can be really, really protective for our mental health and well-being. So I just want to finish on saying that relationships are not a nice to have. And I want to encourage you to think about not leaving them as the first thing that goes when you're busy and overwhelmed. They're not something that I want us to think about investing time in after our work is done. They're actually part of staying well, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. After my weekend in Sydney, I'm really reminded that the most meaningful moments in life are often the simplest. A coffee, a walk, sitting on the couch watching a silly TV show. And sometimes it's a friend who's witnessed every version of you, or sometimes it's a friend who has only known you a short time, but you connect really well with. So this week, I guess my challenge to you is really simple. Choose connection, choose it on purpose, even if you don't fully feel like it. The caveat is choosing it with people who you know fill your cup, because it might be exactly what your mind and body need, especially at this time of year. So go forth, connect, send that text message, spend time with the people who fill your cup. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me on Work and Wellness. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, someone in your network might need to hear this too. Share it with a colleague or friend who could use these insights. I'd love to keep the conversation going, so find us on Instagram at Mind Your Grit, where we share daily tips and continue these discussions. And if you found value in today's episode, please take time to rate and review the show. It makes such a huge difference and helps other people discover conversations they might really need. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Each week, we're building a community of people who believe that success and well-being go hand in hand. You can find the notes, resources, and links from today's episode at mindyourgrit.com. This is Work and Wellness with Davies. Your work matters, your wellness matters, and this is where it all comes together. See you next week.